Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the August meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority to order. The time is 9:05 a.m. Raymond, would you take roll call, please, to ensure a quorum?
Good morning, Ms. Wilson. We're going to take roll call. Ms.
Okay.
Wilson?
Oh, okay, Robert, you're going to take the lead today?
Yes, ma'am.
I was like, Raymond, your voice has changed. Oh,
Are you here?
yeah, yes. Caught
Jim?
me off guard.
Here?
I'm here.
Okay. Joe?
Here.
Silver? Here. Ms. Bird?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Enriquez?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson, all members are here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Studer. Are there any public comment this morning?
None received.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on with the agenda items. We're going to make a little bit of adjustment, if you don't mind. We have a presentation this morning, item number 3, by Mr. Pacheco, who's the president of the Border Industrial Association. It's a detailed presentation. I'd really like to give him the time to go through that and not feel rushed to take other business. So we're going to dispense with all of our business and action items and then come back to that. So then we can spend the balance of the meeting listening to all the great things they're doing and getting updated. So with that, I'll move to item 2, adoption of the minutes of the board meeting of July 13th, 2022. Are there any questions, comments about the minutes?
Motion to approve.
A
Second.
second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item number 4, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the following actions as recommended by the Finance Committee. A, adoption of the CRRMA budget for fiscal year 2023. B, adoption of the fiscal year 2023 investment policy, designation of the investment officer and authorization of training for such investment officer. C, execution of an engagement letter with Gibson, Reddick, Patterson, LLC for the fiscal year 2022 annual audit. D, execution of engagement letters with Pena, Briones, McDaniel and Company for the provision of general certified public accountant services and vehicle registration fee program audit services. And then E, filing of a request for refinancing certain state infrastructure bank loans. Now, we can take these separately if you'd like. I just wanted to read them all into the record so that we wouldn't have to keep going back. So for the first item, the budget.
Yes, ma'am. Robert Studer, Director of Finance, for the record. So just a little background. The Finance Committee did review all of these items last week in depth, including the budget. In front of each of you today, there's a paper copy of the budget resolution and the budget for your review. We did spend significant time on this. The budget itself, there is no change to the reso granting me authority to do budget transfers under $10,000, provided that I come back to the board. We often ask if we are going to amend our budget through an action item that we ask for that authority in advance so that I don't have to bring a report back to you, but you grant that authority to me. So that's just the budget itself. If there are any questions, happy to answer those. Otherwise, I can go through each of the items and then we can take one motion for these. So are there any, Mr. Wardy, would you have any comments from the Finance Committee on the budget or any of the other items?
No, I just wanted to assure the board that we went over this in great detail. I want to commend Robert Studer for doing a great job as usual and fully explaining. There are no significant changes other than the regular changes you have from year to year on the budget. And I think it's a well-done document, and I would recommend that the board approve it.
Did you all discuss or take into account increasing dollars if we need additional capacity with regard to admin staff or some of the other things?
We did not, but that's the kind of thing, if we brought back to the board, we would include the language that authorizes me to amend the budget for that sort of thing. So just to give you an example, we did some work with Atkins this year for the IDC procurement. As part of that agenda item, we asked for authority for me to adjust the budget if necessary.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So that's the first item. There's quite a few more, as you heard Ms. Wilson read into the record. So we have the investment policy. As a refresher, we take the city's investment policy and slap a resolution on it. It gives us a little bit more authority, but we basically use the city's policy. The city's policy was last updated August of '21. That version had no changes from the prior years, prior year's versions. There's no changes. So nothing is changing in that, but we are required to do that once a year as a board, is to adopt the policy, even if there's no changes, appoint an investment officer, which is me, and then list the authorized training for me to attend. I last attended that training, I believe, in April or May of '21, so I do plan to attend that in April or May of '23. There's no other changes on item B. Item 3 is our engagement letter with Gibson Ruddock Patterson. 2 years ago, we did a procurement. It was for 1 year with 9 one-year options. We are exercising the third-year option with this. We're very happy with them, that they're good. They know us. We obviously are a very unique organization, so it helps to have that continuity. But other than the contract going up by $500, which is the ladder that they gave us when we did the procurement, there are no changes there. On the fourth item is our certified public accountant services that we work with Peña Briones McDaniel. They've been around since the beginning of the RMA. They used to handle a lot of what I do today. As that has happened, we don't use them nearly as much as we used to, but if we have some kind of weird item, we can consult with them. And then the second part of that is the VRF audit services that were requested by the county. So you may recall that that's up to $12,000 each year. That is reimbursed to us, and so there's no actual expense to us. The county pays us, and we pay the auditor, and so it's a wash. But those are the 2 items within that. And then last is a potential refinancing of a couple of our state infrastructure bank loans. So the SIB has a program where they are offering to refinance loans at lower rates. Now, the question is, since we became aware of this program and started pursuing it, rates have obviously gone up. This is not locking us into anything, but it allows me to send a letter to the State Infrastructure Bank indicating our interest in refinancing and pursuing that. We will obviously bring back to you if we continue down that path, and it would take a while, but this is authorizing me to take that action. And those are the items under item 4.
And the committee's in consensus with all of these?
Yes, ma'am.
If so, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the resolutions and the adoptions of these different policies.
I'd like to second it.
Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 5, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of agreements for general consulting civil engineering services with Atkins North America, Inc. and HNTB Corporation. This is the final step in our solicitation process that occurred a few months ago.
Yes, ma'am. Robert Studer. With us today, we have folks from both Atkins and HNTB in case you have any questions for them. So as a reminder, the board authorized the issuance of a procurement, which was done in February. We then did selection in April of these 2 firms, and part of that action included authorizing the executive director to negotiate with the 2 firms. We're back today with the contracts for your review. They are 5-year contracts with 2 2-year options at the RMA's discretion to keep these firms for up to a total of 9 years. This is our first time going with 2 firms instead of just 1. And of note, TxDOT has concurred with our procurement, which is great because it allows us to use either firm for federally funded projects. And I do recommend approval.
Are there any questions, comments? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 6, discussion and action on a board resolution establishing scoring criteria and authorizing the issuance of a request for qualifications to tram providers for the Weiler Aerial Tramway Project.
Okay, so again, Robert Studer, this one is a little bit different. This is a step in the process. There's not a big action that's happening today. So we need to do this in order to be ready when we want to actually go out and do the RFP for the tram facility itself. So as a reminder, on this project, we've got the base station with the upgrades around the parking lot. We've got the aerial station and then the tramway itself. This is for the tramway itself. What we're asking today is to authorize scoring and to authorize the executive director to issue the procurement the RFQ, so that we can go out and shortlist a few of the firms that are capable of doing this work. Once we have that, we basically take it, put it on a shelf, and we are ready to move once we have funding available to go issue the actual RFP. So you may be asking, why is an RFQ necessary before an RFP? We're going to ask this firm to both design and build the tramway. If you're going to do design services and engineer, the procurement rules say that you have to do it based on qualifications. So we're going to shortlist, make sure they've got their qualifications, then we can do an RFP that only those firms would be eligible to participate in. So this is a step along the way so that we are ready if funding becomes available as soon as possible.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I second it.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 7, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following instruments as they relate to right-of-way acquisitions for the Darrington Road project. A, the interlocal agreement with the town of Horizon City, and B, work authorization number 56 with Atkins North America, Inc.
Good morning again. So today we do have with us Terry Casada from the town of Horizon. Last night I will mention that they had a council meeting. They voted to approve this item pending final legal review. So I think there was a couple changes and their attorney had not had a chance to review those yet. If IT could bring up, perfect, thank you. So this is working with Town of Horizon to acquire 19 parcels in relation to the Darrington Road project. This is different from the county's Darrington Road project. This is the Town of Horizon's Darrington Road project. I believe what we're doing is acquiring some land for pond and maybe additional right-of-way. It's going to be somewhere in this area here, but as the design firm is working on this, it is necessary for the town to acquire some right-of-way properties for a pond. So the agreement with the town of Horizon, with the town of Horizon is for $1,296,406.10. We then have a work authorization with Atkins, who will do the bulk of the work on appraising the properties, negotiating with the property owners. That agreement, that work authorization is for $723,406.10. The remaining funds are for the RMA and for us to use a legal firm to help with the conveyance of the property back to the town of Horizon, as we will be acquiring it in in our name first before giving it to them. And I recommend approval.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 8, board discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of amendment number 2 to work authorization number 4 with Dannenbaum Engineering Company, El Paso LLC, to add scope to the Rojas Drive Improvements Phase 2 project.
Good morning, Robert Studer again. If IT could bring up the graphic. Thank you. So first, I'd like to point out that my editing skills are not up to par with Raymond's or Atkins, but I did give you a little bit of a line of where the project is. What we're doing here is adding $5,724.04 at the request of the county to extend illumination over here on this right-hand side. This is Mission Ridge School, and what right now the illumination ends with the terminus of the project at NONAP, and the county has asked us to extend that illumination. It's probably going to be a couple of poles near that school to help while we're in the area, add additional lighting near the school for safety. There is no amendment to the ILA with the county. We have sufficient budget to cover this. There's also no increase or change with the Atkins work authorization. There is a slight fee increase to the RMA as the design cost is going up. And with that, I recommend approval.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I second it.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, no, we already did that one, I'm sorry. Item number 9, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of amendment number 3 to work authorization number 1.1 with Hewitt Zollers for certain improvements on the Fabens Airport Improvement Project. Is your mic on?
Oh, yes, ma'am, sorry. This one's cool. We've done quite a few things with the county out at the airport, the automated weather station, but we're designing, we did a turn-in lane to make it safer for people to turn in. We're designing hangars for them. So what this does is adds $47,254.38 to the design of those hangars to add solar panels on the top of them, and then also the removal of a septic tank system and the design of a new septic tank system. Again, there is no change to the ILA or the Atkins work authorizations. We have budget sufficient to cover this. The RMA fee will increase slightly, but this is cool for the county to be adding solar panels on top of the roofs of the hangars that we're designing. Very, very forward thinking. I do recommend approval.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 10, presentation, discussion, and action on change orders related to the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan and El Paso County Passenger Shelters and Sidewalks Program.
Robert Studer for the record. If IT could bring up the PowerPoint, thank you very much. So we have two change orders today that we're talking about. One has already been approved. It was under Raymond's authority. The second one we're asking for board approval. So the first one is on the El Paso County Passenger Shelters and Sidewalks Program. Those pictures are not relevant to this item, but just a reminder, a refresher of that this procurement was done very broadly, so that as we had funds from different projects, we have an on-call contractor to go out and get the shelters and install them, or to install sidewalks on our behalf. So the idea from the beginning was that we're going to have all these different buckets of funds. So instead of going out and procuring a firm each time we want to go do some sidewalks or some shelters, we would have a big procurement umbrella that we can do several projects underneath. That flexibility has been great for this exact item. So today we're adding change order number 3, or we've already added change order number 3, and what that did was add the ability for the firm Hawk to go out and get 3 shelters to be used as reserves for the streetcar program. You may recall that we have excess funds on the streetcar, and we're trying to use those now in coordination with the city of El Paso. So this is one of those things, in case a car or something happens to one of the shelters that's out right now. This gives the city a few to have in reserve so that they can put one back in its place right away in case of an emergency, or if they wanted to extend to a new location, or change the route in some way and need a new bus shelter. This would provide that to them. So that's the first one, and like I said, that one's already been approved. Next, we're going to talk about Pelicano. Pelicano has had quite a few change orders already. There's 3 here we have listed as pending. We're not discussing those today. Those are all small enough that Mr. Tejas will be able to approve those when they're ready, but they weren't quite ready to make today's board meeting. We are talking about number 19, which is related to that Mission Ridge relief route. You may recall, I've got an image for you on the next page. I would like to note that the dollar amount changed by a little over $200 yesterday, and so that new dollar amount is $142,296.60, and I think it changed by about $217. So this is basically what's happening. To orient you, on the top we've got Vista del Sol. On the left-hand side we've got Loop 375. On the bottom of the graphic we have Pelicano, which is this project. And on the right, down here is where Mission Ridge is, and we added this relief route to help with some of the traffic concerns that are happening during the Pelicano construction. Well, this project is taking some time. The city actually is working with a developer in this little area here that's been smoothed out a little bit. I don't know how well you can see it. But there's a little rectangle here that's been graded, and so it looks smoother than the rest of the desert. To connect that, the city is building a road right here in green. Our relief route actually runs through this this proposed development. We were using the right-of-way. We're no longer going to have access to that. So what this does is ties in the relief route to the city's road in green and keeps that relief route open for the duration of the construction of Pelicano, so that we have that there to provide egress and ingress for people so they're not stuck on Pelicano. So with that, I do have a requested action that the board make a motion to authorize a board to approve a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute change order 19 with JR Construction Inc. for the Pelicano Drive widening project, subject to TxDOT and county approval. I would like to add that this is a federally funded project, so we do need TxDOT's approval, but the county is paying for this 100%.
Are there any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item, 11, discussion and action on the strategic plan 22-27 document. Excuse me.
Okay, again, Robert Studer. So just as a reminder, the strategic planning session took place in May. We then brought it back to the board in June. The board adopted it with a couple of revisions, but one of the comments was made is that it's a living document that's designed to be amended as we go. So with that, it was referred to the planning committee. The planning committee met in July and has 4 suggested revisions that they would like to specifically call out some projects and include them here. So I'll go through those with you real quickly. This is a red line version of the plan. So you can see here under Goal 1 that we are adding to explore a partnership with New Mexico and Don Ana County for a commercial relief route from the Union Pacific facility in New Mexico and getting them over to I-10. So that's one of the things that the Planning Committee has asked specifically to include. The next 3 fall under Goal 2. First being to pursue a partnership for the development of the Borderland Expressway, hopefully resulting in the drafting of an infrastructure bill grant application. Next is to explore a partnership for the development of the Border Highway East project. That project was brought up by TxDOT during the initial planning session in May, so we want to make sure that we're clear that we are interested in pursuing that. And then last is to pursue the development of a truck parking project using information from TxDOT's 2020 study. So this is just adding a little bit firmer language that we are intending to develop a project. Rather than just to review it. And you look at the item ahead, it was to review that statewide study. And so this is a little bit more indicative language of our plans. And those are the 4 changes. Mr. Smith, I don't know if you have any comments.
Yes, I do. First off, thanks to the planning committee. It's an amazing group, and thank you to staff for everything that you did putting this together. To include all those attendees from our general engineering consultants. First thing is on the portion where it talks about the putting together and seeking help and putting together grant applications, that doesn't apply to just one single project, Borderland Expressway. That applies to all of our priorities that we brought up. So the language as far as the putting together grant applications and all that shouldn't be just for one. It basically applies to all. So just in the general language and putting that all together. But this is an ambitious plan that the planning committee came up with. It requires a lot of action and a lot of help, and we are getting a lot of help from all of our partners that are out there, and it's very much appreciated. But we want to kind of keep our foot on the accelerator and get ourselves prepped to go after some of these monies that are out there in grants as part of the infrastructure bill, and to provide as much as we can for the entire region, which is also going to fit in a lot into some of the items that Mr. Pacheco will be talking about in his presentation, because we still want to keep our regional focus. So thank you to everybody that contributed to all of this, and Planning Committee is an amazing group, especially because of all the people that are helping out. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Jim. I don't believe we intended to, that they're mutually exclusive. I do think that we wanted specifically to call that out on this item, that's the ultimate goal for the Borderland Expressway per the planning committees, but it doesn't mean that we're not applying for grants elsewhere. So with that.
But I had recommended to Mr. Smith that we take that out of that one project.
Okay.
And group it at the end under all 4 projects, so it doesn't look like we're advocating for one at the expense of others. And if this project is advancing quicker than the others, then we certainly should advocate and make ourselves available and even commit resources if we need to assist in it. But if some of the others should become available to pursue, then we should be having that conversation as well. So
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we're sort of agnostic about projects
Sure.
being more important than others. We talk about it in general at the beginning where we expanded and enhanced partnerships with the smaller regional partners for grants. But I think for TxDOT and the county, we should be equally as ambitious in terms of being proactive for any of these projects, because some of them may be in a position to move forward and be eligible for some categories of funding at the same time and not necessarily be competing. So do you object to that? If we just insert that elsewhere in that?
No, as far as I'm concerned, just that insertion there makes absolutely no difference because we're going to go, our goal is to go forward with everything that's ready and aggressively seek grant applications to help us with the projects that are ready to go, that pop up on the screen. So I have no problem with that changing in wording because it really doesn't change anything, but it does clarify that we're after multiple projects.
So hearing that, I would ask for a motion to amend the strategic plan with the revisions as read into the record.
I so move.
I second that motion.
Any other questions or discussions? I'll entertain a motion then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you for the great work and your leadership, Colonel Smith, on this. I really appreciate it. You've done a great job leading the planning committee for a number of years now. It's a good document. And so the next item is item 12, which is discussion and action on a board resolution in support of the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization's Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application.
Robert Studer for the record. Yes, so this one's a little bit different. So the county actually approached us about taking a regional approach and working with some of the smaller communities to go after a grant through the IIJ. Now that grant is for the design funds or not design funds, for planning funds to come up with a plan for making the streets safe. So as we started to reach out, we heard the MPO was taking a similar approach. So we're going to piggyback with the MPO. The MPO is going to apply for the grant and then turn those funds over to the RMA to actually develop the plan. Once that plan is in place, we can use the plan paid for by IIJA funds to potentially go seek additional funds to implement that plan with the county and those other smaller municipalities or anyone, frankly, that's covered in the plan. We would like to partner with them to go seek additional grant funds to implement that plan. This is merely us supporting the MPO's grant application, of which then we would be a part of. With that, I recommend approval.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I don't know if y'all are being nice or if I just crushed it, but y'all had like no questions for me that whole time. And so, yeah, thank you.
You did a great job.
Great job.
Yes. Okay, the last action item before we get back to our presentation is number 13. And this is discussion and action on board resolutions for the following items as they relate to the employment of the executive director. A, approve the annual performance evaluation and authorize the chair to communicate the results of the evaluation to the city of El Paso and take other actions as necessary. And B, approve the recommended terms for renewal of the employment agreement between the CRRMA's executive director and the city of El Paso, and authorize the RMA to continue to reimburse the city of El Paso for the employment of the executive director. Now, we've examined these. We've met with our attorney. We made recommendations and changes. He submitted those to me, and I asked Mr. Studer to make sure that all of you had an opportunity to review those. I understand that Mr. Tejas is in consensus with the contract as it's now updated. And so Mr. Gordon is not here today, and he's out of town. But I told him I didn't think that we needed to have any more extensive executive session discussion. It would just be if there were any disagreements about any of the provisions that we could address that in the open session. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about the documents as they stand now?
No, I don't.
Okay. Then if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve both A and B?
So moved.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Raymond. We're happy to have you on board for
And
another
thank
3
you.
years.
Thank you, Raymond.
Getting Wally pipped right now.
But beware, Robert's doing a great job.
Right?
We're super impressed.
Well, the part about docking your pay for today, because, we didn't.
All right, so that ends all of our business items, and so I'd like to go back to item number 3 and introduce Mr. Jerry Pacheco, who's the president of the Border Industrial Association and who's been very active in regional economic development for many, many years. Writes a frequent article in the El Paso Inc. and other publications, and has done tremendous work on border trade and economic development. And so, Mr. Pacheco, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for waiting so we could get through our business, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Great to be here. I was talking to my good friend Joe, and I can't remember when the last time I presented in front of the RMA, so it's good to be back here. But I'll give an overview of what's going on in the Santa Teresa area, which is going to affect a lot of what we experience here from an infrastructure standpoint, traffic standpoint, and trade standpoint. So let me kind of go through this. So we represent the Border Industrial Association, but we also run a program called the International Business Accelerator, which is legislatively funded. We help companies in New Mexico export and import and take their products globally. And we also recruit businesses on behalf of the state of New Mexico via the New Mexico Partnership. So one of the things that's been our overriding goal for 30 years that I've been in Santa Teresa is the establishment of a binational community. We call it Los Santos. Los Santos is San Jeronimo on the Mexican side, Santa Teresa on the American side. I find myself probably promoting San Jeronimo as much as I do Santa Teresa, because the more we can help the Mexican side, we get a lot of pieces on the U.S. side. So I always promote that we're so strategically located between Asia, Europe, and Latin America. We have our beautiful borderplex area there, and this is San Jeronimo. So you've got in that green area about 47,000 acres of developable land. Mr. Eloy Vaina, who's a big player in Mexico and in our region, is the steward of that 47,000 acres. And with Los Santos, we've also developed a binational campus. You'll see that there, the Pacifica campus. That's a cross-border campus that we're marketing heavily in Asia right now. For some reason, this is stuck. Let's see, that went backwards. It doesn't seem to be. Oh, there it is. We got to go back. Thank you. So this is the border is the dotted yellow line. You've got Foxconn, you've got R.R. Donnelley on the Mexican side, and we've got a brand new gummy bear factory there. I mean, 220,000 square feet of gummy bear manufacturing for the gummy bear consuming world. North there, you'll see the Santa Teresa development. My office is in the Santa Teresa Airport Park. It's about 5 miles north of the border there. Of note, the Mexican government has already committed to reconstructing the San Jeronimo Highway, which is 12 miles south of the port of entry, hooking up with Highway 2 in Mexico that goes east and west. So that'll be a project on the Mexican side that we can expect here pretty soon. Do I need to click on it when it freezes up?
Yes, probably.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Santa Teresa, let's talk about that project. That turquoise area is about 22,000 acres of land that we are developing. That kind of jagged top of that more or less triangle there is the Union Pacific project and the Santa Teresa Jetport. We're connected to I-10 via the Pete Domenici Highway, and then you can see south of the turquoise area there, the red circle is the port of entry. The San Jeronimo Highway is that stretch of the black highway that goes to Highway 2. That's going to be reconstructed. So in Santa Teresa, we have 4 industrial parks. We've got the airport park in green. To the west of that is a privately owned intermodal park. By privately owned intermodal park, I mean that there's a firm that owns 1,200 acres. They have about 10 miles worth of privately owned rail track. They're building about another 3 miles as we speak, and they have a couple of locomotives. So we put our rail-served clients in that land there. It's been a very popular place. To the west of that is our newest park. We established that park in 2016. It's called the Santa Teresa West Park. We have about 1.3 million square feet in that park right now, and that's also a very popular place, and I'll discuss some projects that are going in there. Down at the border, we have a smaller park, the Border Industrial Park there. We actually have a project that will come to fruition in the next 12 months down there also. And a major project that should be of note to this group, you see those jagged, or you see those dotted black lines at the bottom of the slide there. Please disregard the one to the north because that's the Columbus Highway. The one to the south is an extension of a road we call St. Francis. St. Francis is a little road in the Border Industrial Park there. We received funding between $40 and $45 million to build that dotted line along the border fence there, dropping off the escarpment and hooking up to McNutt. That it's interesting. We got engineering money to engineer that road about 3 years ago. And so when we finally got the $40 to $45 million, we're way ahead of the game because Bohannon Houston expects to wrap up the engineering study by the end of the year. We expect construction to begin early next year and then be completed the following year. We had hoped it would be a 4-lane highway. It looks like it's going to be 2 lanes because of the escalating cost of construction, but they're going to design it to be expandable to 4 lanes. That'll provide a reliever route for a couple of reasons. We were discussing the traffic at I-10 and Artcraft. It's horrible there. I mean, you can't time it anymore. It used to be that you didn't want to hit that at 5 to 6 o'clock or in the morning. Now you can be there at 12 o'clock and you're going to be 3 iterations of the light there. So we've got a problem because the more companies we locate to Santa Teresa, we're pushing more traffic through there. And as Union Pacific expands, and you'll see the Union Pacific project in the green there, we're going to just generate more traffic. That highway, the extension of St. Francis, will allow us another reliever route for northbound traffic that eventually will head to El Paso. That'll be privately operated vehicle traffic and commercial traffic. We have 3 major landowners in Santa Teresa. We have the Paso del Norte Limited Partnership that owns about 18,000 acres. You've got the Santa Teresa Capital. Mr. Lane Gaddy, who's a very well-known young businessman here in El Paso, has a stake in Santa Teresa. And you've got the Iron Horse Resources, the firm that owns the privately owned intermodal park. Yeah. Thank you. One of the things we're really touting and taking advantage of is the rail connection we have between the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles to Santa Teresa. That's about 760 miles worth of rail. We also have Ferromex coming into the El Paso area, and we promote ourselves as a trade inland port of entry. We are right now working with US DOT to get designated a hub. A hub would mean, in terms of the designation, concentrated resources from US DOT, EV charging stations, more cooperation to locate business within that hub.
Are you right-clicking?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you just use the scroll wheel.
I'm trying to right click.
Yeah, I think just the scroll wheel.
Okay. So that's the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. That's the rail that comes to us. This entire region has a heck of an opportunity to capitalize on that trade, that particularly that container trade that's coming from Asia. In New Mexico, we are dedicating resources and working closely with Union Pacific. We've even founded a training program with Union Pacific and Doña Ana Community College to develop skill sets for potential employees that would go into the industrial base. Yeah, it doesn't like me. It does not like me.
So just keep using the scroll wheel only.
And it won't, I'm doing that, it just won't go forward. You have magic fingers, I guess.
I think if you keep the mouse within the window, it should work.
Okay.
So now keep it.
Okay, so there's the Sunset Route. Of the 760 miles between here and Los Angeles, only about 100 miles are not double-tracked. Union Pacific intends to double-track that section, and when that's double-tracked, we will literally have a train freeway to our region. And we can move cargo from LA area, where a lot of it shouldn't be. About 53% of what comes into the LA area from Asia does not stay on the coast. It proceeds eastward. And we have a heck of an opportunity to develop economic development opportunities based on that. This is a Union Pacific project. When it was built, it was the largest project in our region. We opened it on April Fool's Day on 2013. It's about 11 and a half miles long, about a mile wide at its widest. It's a diesel refueling station. We're getting about 55 to 60 trains a day through there for refueling. It's also a crew changing station. That's why across from my office we actually have a travel lodge and a 24/7 diner, so the crews can jump off the trains and get fed and sleep and go out the next day. And most importantly for us, it's an intermodal yard. We're doing about 250,000 container lifts a year. We can easily do up to 750,000. This is one of Union Pacific's largest intermodal yards in its entire system. When I take people out and give them a tour, I say, you're going to see miles of containers. They think I'm saying that metaphorically, and it's not metaphoric. It's miles of containers. It's about 3 miles of container lines there. And of course, our connectivity and I-10 coast to coast. So we've got the Doña Ana County International Jetport, and I'll talk about that. You've got the intermodal yard, the Pete Domenici Highway. That's an outdated photo, and I'll show you why. That's asphalt. And then we got the port of entry. Plus, another major driver that keeps growing. This thing is amazing. Of all the cattle that cross the U.S.-Mexico border, about 62% cross at Santa Teresa. And my good friend Daniel Manzanares is working hard to expand the facilities there. They're their own port of entry, and it's only going to increase the traffic on Pete Domenici Artcraft. The Pete Domenici photo previously I showed you is outdated because in 2020 we accessed some federal government money, and we took all the asphalt off of the Pete Domenici Highway from the International Port of Entry to the Texas border, spent $47 million, and we now have concrete on that stretch. It's our policy now to not build any roads out of asphalt because we know what happens in the summer when it gets hot and sticky. Plus, when the Union Pacific project opened up, we got an average of about 600 extra trucks a day on top of what we were already generating in the industrial park. So a lot of heavy truck traffic. Some of the firms in our industrial base were very heavy in electronics. Foxconn right now has about 1.5 million square feet in San Jeronimo. They're doing about 70,000 Dell computers a day. We get a piece of that on our side because we got more than 300,000 square feet of warehousing space to supply Foxconn the components to build the Dell computers. But we're also pretty heavy in automotive. We've got companies like FXI that are doing your headliner. DA Inc. is from Japan. They're doing plastic injection. You've got CN from Turkey. They're doing about 7 million pounds of copper wire a month. A lot of heavy manufacturing. One of the things that we did that I'm very proud that we did 10 years ago, and I should have known this having worked in Mexico all my entire career, but it came to my attention that Mexican trucks, commercial trucks, can weigh up to 96,000 pounds, okay? Coming across the border, and Joe knows this, coming across the border, if it's a divisible load, they have to offload to 80,000 pounds. So I said, well, Santa Teresa is the easternmost port of entry that's a land port of entry. Everything east of us crosses water. So why can't we allow those Mexican trucks? Can our roads handle that? NMDOT, yeah. State police, I mean, can you inspect and ensure that, you know, they're obeying the law? Yeah. So why can't we do that? Because it's against the law. So let's go up to Santa Fe and we'll get a sponsor in the House and the Senate. Let's change the law. So we established a 12-mile overweight cargo zone. And Mexican trucks can load up to 96,000 pounds or bring the double, you know, pups, not have to offload. You can also load up to 96,000 pounds within the zone and head back to Mexico. So if you're doing 96,000 pounds, you're loading 15% more. So after every 6.7 loads, the next load is absolutely free in terms of logistics. It's been a boon. It's been a major tool that we've used to attract companies that need that extra, you know, poundage or that extra weight. And a lot of commodity companies are very interested in that. We track exports in Santa Teresa, New Mexico's exports, and we plotted all 50 states' exports to the world, which is the graphic on the left, and to Mexico, which is the graphic on the right. New Mexico, God bless my state. I love my state. I'm from New Mexico. My family's been there generations. I always say when I tell an audience, fill in the blank. New Mexico leads the nation in what? And it's recidivism, you know, child whatever, poverty, what have you. When we have something to celebrate, we have to celebrate it. And New Mexico, during the past 11 years, more or less, has led the nation in export growth percentage to the world and export growth percentage to Mexico. And I'm going to make a case for you that that's Santa Teresa. Last year, our exports were up 46%. And people say, well, of course, because 2020 was horrible. Everybody shut down. We didn't shut down. What we make in Santa Teresa, while you and I were sequestered at home during the worst of the pandemic and we're ordering off of Amazon, we're ordering consumer electronics that need plastic injection, they need copper wire, they need to go into a package. We make all that. So our industrial base actually set a record in 2020 that was broken in 2021, but our exports are up significantly. 13% to Mexico last year. And we also track exports by the MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, that's published by the Bureau of Statistics, the Bureau of Census, excuse me. So that top line is New Mexico's exports to the world. The green line is New Mexico's exports to Mexico. And then the kind of dark line that's paralleling that green line is Doña Ana County. Doña Ana County leads New Mexico in exports to the world. The biggest city in Doña Ana County is Las Cruces. Las Cruces doesn't make hardly anything. It's primarily a university town, retiree town, and federal government. That is the Santa Teresa effect. Santa Teresa is responsible for almost all of our exports to Mexico. And right now, the Santa Teresa industrial base is accounting for about 58% of New Mexico's exports to the world. So you could take Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Roswell, and they don't match what's coming out of Santa Teresa at this point. Our little port of entry, which I'm kind of embarrassed, I went and saw my buddy Gilbert Rivera over there at the Port Authority in Nogales, and I was just spying on him, and he knew I was spying on him, but I wanted to see the new Mariposa port of entry, which is an absolute eighth wonder of the world. And he wanted to come see our little port of entry. And I said, no, please don't come see Santa Teresa Port of Entry, because it's a little port of entry that was opened in 1993 that really hasn't had major renovations. And yet we're ranking 6th in terms of the most important ports of entry on the entire U.S.-Mexico border. We've actually surpassed the Bridge of the Americas in terms of trade volume at this point. And the Santa Teresa Port of Entry, that's our focus right now. We estimate we need about $170 million to modernize the port of entry. We have $500,000 to conduct a study in terms of what the port will look like. And then we're working with our congressional delegation. We're meeting with our 2 senators next week to see if we can move up on the appropriations list. These are the truck crossings at Santa Teresa, which is just crazy. I mean, we've accommodated the Santa Teresa Port of Entry. The CBP officers there are just amazing. They adjust when we have a lot of traffic. We were a reliever route a couple of months ago when we had Texas conducting secondary inspections. So Santa Teresa was the reliever route where a lot of that traffic that couldn't come through the El Paso ports of entry. NMSU did an independent study on the economic impact of Santa Teresa on our region, and they concluded that we add about $1.1 billion to the economy every year, and we support about 6,000 jobs. To put that in perspective, last year Spaceport America did their own independent study. For the 15 years that they've been open, during those 15 years, they've contributed $1 billion. Film, which all of us know is huge in New Mexico, they did their own impact study last year, and they concluded that film adds about $800 million to the economy. To put that in perspective, the Santa Teresa industrial base is bigger than Spaceport and bigger than film. We're just not as sexy. We're not Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, you know? I always say we're meat and potatoes. We're packaging, we're metal fabrication, we're plastic injection. It's not sexy. But those kind of businesses come here, they spend a lot of money to construct their facilities, bring a lot of equipment, a lot of tax base, and they hire a lot of people, and they stay here a long time. It's not the sexiest thing, like being in a movie or something, but it really is, I think, the future of New Mexico's economy. Wrapping it up, project updates. Last year, we worked with a group out of Dallas, Blue Road Investment Group. They built a 315,000 square foot speculative building. Tecma went in there, and Ergomotion. We're actually seeing, and I spoke to the Federal Reserve yesterday, we're actually seeing the reshoring and nearshoring that you see in the papers. Ergomotion is a company out of the United States that's the biggest adjustable bedding manufacturer, and they moved production back from China to Juarez, but they're using us as a distribution center. Mr. Paul Foster, 2 years ago, built a spec building of 183,000 square feet. Because of all the activity at Foxconn, that got leased up by Expeditors, which supplies Foxconn. And Mr. Foster did an identical building of 183,000 square feet. That is off the market. Of the 6 million square feet we have in Santa Teresa, we only have 8,000 square feet for lease, which is a problem. This is that red arrow is the second. In the last 3 years, we recruited 3 Taiwanese companies. Admiral Cable is in that yellow area up there. They've got a campus. They make cable for computers and tools. Zentria makes semi-truck trailer walls. They were just in my office last week. They're about to launch their project, which will be about 360,000 square feet and 230 employees. I'm going over these projects because we all need to know what's going to happen there. If we're lucky enough to get the employees to work in this industrial base, we're going to have a tremendous increase of traffic. Zentria will have 230 employees. Admiral Cable, when it gets its equipment set up in the next couple of months, is going to hire 342 employees. We're going to be pushing a lot more traffic onto Artcraft. Thereby lies the importance of that extension of St. Francis. That's the road for Zentria. The privately owned intermodal park expanded the footprint by another 100 acres. They added another 2.5 miles of rail, and they're in the process of adding another 3 miles. That's Admiral Cable. They'll be open before the year's end. Lane Gaddy did a 120,000 square foot recycling facility there. I mean, it's increased our truck traffic across border tremendously. Due to the overweight commercial zone that we established, we recruited last year 2 Mexican produce companies. One is already in an expansion mode, and we're scrambling to see if we can accommodate them with a build-a-suit building there. Stagecoach has a huge footprint in our industrial base. They just did a big truck court. That's the gummy bear factory on the other side of the border. 800,000 pounds of gummy bears a day. Union Pacific last year invested another $20 million in its facility. They did what's called a block swap yard, where you build unit trains. A unit train is a train that goes to a sole destination. We have that capability there. Because of the activity on the Mexican side of the border, we had to work with the New Mexico Natural Gas Company, and we now have a second natural gas line that crosses the border into San Jeronimo. That'll keep development going on the other side. Through 2021 and the previous 5 years, we had lobbied and received a total of $9.9 million for the Santa Teresa Jetport. We can now land 737-300 series cargo jets there. We're working with the mayor of Juarez to do a bypass. That green line there is what we're calling the Anapra bypass. It would connect to the border highway and go straight to the Santa Teresa port of entry. That is extremely important to us because a lot of commercial traffic prefers not to go through Anapra. If you've ever been there, you've got grade issues, you've got traffic issues, you've got potholes, what have you. The Anapra bypass would open up Santa Teresa to central Juarez like no other project. So I mentioned we only have 8,000 square feet of space available for lease out of 6 million. Well, thank God for the Blue Road guys out of Dallas. That's a 365,000 square foot speculative building that they're going to deliver probably towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, that's already leased out, so that's off the market. My neighbor, Abiaxa, a Mexican company, is building 2 speculative buildings side by side. This is a 135,000 square foot building. I just took that picture yesterday. That'll be delivered by the end of the year. That'll be our sole, other than the 8,000 square feet building that we have available for lease. The next building should be delivered sometime end of next summer. There's the 2.5 miles of new rail that the private rail company's building. And you can forget all the other projects. In terms of popularity in the industrial base, the Love's Truck Stop is the happiest thing we were doing here. So we've got a Chester's Fried Chicken, a Subway, and a Godfather's Pizza. So between the Mexican side of the border and the U.S. side of the border, you've got Foxconn broke ground at the New Year's on a 1.2 million square foot expansion on top of the 1.5 million they have. Sunrise Confections is the gummy bear factory. They're building a second building of 280,000 square feet. Blue Road Investments, you saw the 365,000 square foot. Abiaxa is building 2 135,000 square foot buildings. So we have a total of 2.1 million square feet under construction. That'll all come online pretty quickly. That'll all have employees. That'll all have trucks running up and down Artcraft and the Pete Domenici Highway. We're marketing hard in Asia. We're hooked up to social media. We, along with the Borderplex Alliance, we hosted a group of about 30 Taiwanese EV manufacturers about a month and a half ago. And we had a special legislative session in December, and we had the regular session in January, February. Out of the 2 sessions, we got the $45 million for the extension to St. Francis. That's funded. The Jetport got another $20 million. Burrell Aviation, it's the Burrell family that did the medical center at NMSU. They also have an aviation branch. They have publicly announced that they're going to work with Doñana County to invest about $73 million in the airport. The county will use the $20 million to up the infrastructure. We have a waiting list of 74 parties that need a hangar out there, and we're going to build some hangars, and a logistics base will go out there. Eventually, a cross runway will go on the airport with FAA funding, and then we can land any size of cargo jet you can imagine. Water infrastructure, and then we're going to build another parking lot. So it's about $700,000. That's a rendering of the border highway connector, which is the St. Francis extension. These are the airport improvements. That green area there is the logistics center that's going to be built. At the top of the slide there is the cross runway that's designed. Bohannon Houston is designing the whole thing there. The Jetport's going to be a major, major logistics hub for us. And that's what we got going on.
That is absolutely amazing.
It's Madam Chairman, there have been times in the 30 years I've been there that I've been in parking lots with empty buildings almost in tears, wondering what I'm doing out there. So when you have this momentum happening like this, you got to ride it, you know, and we've been very, very fortunate in the last few years.
No, you should be very pleased and proud of yourself for all of your efforts. I mean, they're certainly coming to fruition, and I know I drive out there a lot in that area, and I'm always amazed at how much development has transpired.
And I invite members of the board, if you want a windshield tour, I'm always happy to give that out there, and I can explain what's going on. It's always neater to see the stuff in person. And if you want to go out there, and I'd be happy to show you around.
I'd like to do that. We'll coordinate that. Maybe we can either host one of our meetings out there or get together after a meeting and just come out if people have time or something like that.
I have a pretty big back conference room that should be able to accommodate if you wanted to hold a meeting out there or just to gather there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jerry, you and I go back a very long way in this community, and I've got to recognize his contributions in the days when he said he was staring at empty desert out there, but his drive and determination and his willingness to work on a true regional perspective is unrivaled in our community. A lot of people talk it, but they don't walk it. So thank you, Jerry,
Appreciate
for
it.
what you have done and what you are doing and your leadership, because El Paso is a net receiver providing employees, everything to support the industrial park. It also helps El Paso. So we really appreciate you
Thank
and
you.
appreciate you coming today to visit with us. I think it opens people's eyes on some work that we need to do in that area to help support probably the most booming part of our region. So not probably is the most booming part of our region. So thanks again.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Is the land port, is that a typical GSA-owned facility?
Madam Chairman, yes, it is. It is.
So would there be any opportunities potentially to explore whether or not the RMA could maybe execute an expansion there, coordinate maybe with GSA to actually design, build, and do something non-traditional from their usual appropriations?
Madam Chair, I think that's a really good idea. The coordinating agency on the port of entry, there's two, but the main one at ground level is the New Mexico Border Authority.
Okay.
They're physically located just north of the port of entry, and the executive director is Mr. Marco Grajeda. And if you do go out and visit us in Santa Teresa, I'll make sure that you can meet him personally.
I actually think that is a very real opportunity to maybe look at something different, particularly with this new infrastructure bank funding, where we might be able to do a design build and a payback. Now, is this a toll-free facility?
Correct, Madam
Okay.
Chairman. And if you'd like, not to wait until you go out there, but I can make the introduction via email. Marco's a good guy to work with, and he's deep into that whole port redesign and what have you.
I would actually like Raymond and Robert to maybe start that dialogue just to get some information on like what's going on their end, and how far along that project is. And I also think with all of the road developments, even some of the roads that are inside your development, if they're arterials, we could actually help design build those too, and maybe expedite and do some advanced funding with payback. So I think it'd be really worthwhile to not only just see everything, but to really get a detailed understanding of the infrastructure requirements, where they are in the queue, and whether or not we could assist in expediting some of those.
Madam Chair, absolutely. I'll make that introduction between
Perfect.
Raymond
Yes.
and Marco.
And I think Mr. Reyes had a comment too. So Joe?
I would like to specifically ask you, you know the RMA and what our capability is, and as far as our charter and our ability to, covers a pretty wide gamut of potential. But what we sometimes lack is specific direction. In other words, going after something that all parties would agree that, yeah, this is really, we really need this. And yes, we would totally support you getting involved to help us get it. So in other words, instead of us going out and throwing our line in the water and fishing for opportunities, for somebody to actually put a fish on the hook that we can reel in and start working. So I would solicit, just as part of this board and part of the planning committee, any ideas that you may have that to help you achieve those goals that you've set and established for what you'd like to do out there, of something that may fit into our little arena that we could help with in a lot of different ways. So I would openly solicit your guidance, your opinion, your ideas, and the things that you would be willing to get behind us doing and help us make happen. So,
Madam Chair, Director Smith, the Border Authority does have detailed write-ups on the projects I mentioned, and that'd be a good start for the board to see that and what we're intending to do out there. But I will make that contact between Mr. Tejas and Mr. Grajeda.
I actually think that would be a great opportunity for the planning committee to kind of dig its teeth into and to see which things are far enough along where there is an interest in us having some role, either to assist with upfront design or some other things where we could actually come in and build the project for you and expedite some of the construction. I think some of the challenges we've had is actually finding the right contacts in New Mexico that might be willing to work with the RMA outside of a traditional kind of New Mexico DOT role. I mean, we've done some things with TxDOT, but we've run into that here too, where they're not as inclined as they once were to maybe delegate for us to build some things. And I do think we've got a really good track record in terms of delivering good projects on time and on budget.
Excellent.
And then, Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you had the opportunity, what would be your top priority? Looking downrange or looking into the future, because well, I'll let you answer.
Madam Chair, Director Reyes, the redesign and reconstruction or modernization of the port of entry is paramount. Once we get that bottlenecked, we're not recruiting very many more companies. We still enjoy an average of about 30-minute northbound crossing time in Santa Teresa. And we've shucked and jived to keep that. And I'll give you a specific example. The port was previously opened from 6 in the morning to 12 a.m. for privately operated vehicle traffic. To accommodate the increase in commercial traffic, CBP asked our business community, we worked it out with the congressionals, if they could take 2 hours and close the port at 10 p.m. instead of 12 a.m. and shift those hours to a 6 a.m. start at the port of entry. They're doing stuff like that to accommodate the increased traffic, but there's going to come a day where it's not going to work anymore. And I talk about the port of entry is paramount. Physical infrastructure is obviously very important. More lanes, more efficient layout of the port of entry. The way it's laid out now, if you can imagine, nobody in 1993 imagined we'd be at this point. Or if you did, you had to be a crazy person. But it's not just the physical infrastructure. What is very vexing is the human infrastructure. It takes so long, and you would know this as well as anybody, given your career. If CBP recruits a prospect, a recruit, it takes sometimes up to a year to do a background check on that person. Then it takes another, several months of training, and then that person is put on the line and they can't do anything. They have to shadow, an experienced person for about a year. So even if we get infrastructure, it's going to be like the Port of Columbus. They've got a brand new, beautiful port out there, and you go out there and sometimes it's just one lane open because they just don't have the agents. So we're really struggling to kind of put the pieces together. And then the other element is you've got to coordinate with the Mexican side. You can't do stuff on our side in a void. So we've been in very high-level talks with the Mexican government, and I think us becoming a reliever route in people's minds during the past couple of months has really lifted our profile. So the Mexican government seems committed to modernizing the San Jeronimo side. But the port of entry definitely is the biggest thing that we're focusing on.
And that's going to be part of your conversation with the two senators?
Madam Chair, Director Reyes, absolutely. They were both coming at different times, but we begged them, can you come on the same day so we don't have to do the same thing twice? So August 16th, we'll have them in my office, and we're going to hammer them with the port of entry. They already know. And they're very good, a very good delegation, and we're just going to reiterate how important that port of entry is, and we're going to show them the projects that are going on. It's been pre-pandemic since I've seen any of them there in Santa Teresa, which is understood. But it gives us an opportunity to hammer, in their minds that this is it. I mean, we have an opportunity to diversify New Mexico's economy away from oil and gas, tourism, and government spending. That's what makes up our economy. I've always said that this offers the best chance, the New Mexico's border region offers the best chance to diversify the state's economy. And hopefully they believe that also.
Very good, thank you.
I have one question for you, Jerry. Early on, when you helped us get the Border Expressway meetings going in your facilities, and we're so thankful to you for helping get that together, New Mexico DOT showed us a map of a reliever route from Strauss that would come around and hook to I-10 to cut the traffic on Artcraft Road. Is that moving forward at all?
Madam Chair, Director Wardy, it's there. It's NMDO, and that's the High Mesa Road, is what we call
Right.
that. And that would essentially run from where the Santa Teresa Jetport is, go up north and connect near the airport in Las Cruces on I-10. 40-some miles worth of highway. They've studied that. It kind of went dormant, but they now put it in their long-term projects. So it's still there. It's still there.
Okay, thank you.
And that might be, I mean, we're having conversations. New Mexico is having a windfall in oil and gas revenues. And I've been talking to one representative, told me we're in a generational situation where think big because we can fund big stuff now. So that might go to medium term, even more urgent, a more urgent project. But one of the things I'll mention is that Pete Domenici Highway Artcraft, and I believe Texas is already funding the overpasses for Upper Valley and West Side Drive. We have McNutt, which is, we've had fatalities there, and the more truck traffic coming off of that grade, we do need a flyover there, and probably eventually over Airport Road and Pete Domenici, and then Strauss Road, which are our three intersections there. That is another priority that we're going to bring up with the senators next week.
Madam Chair? You brought up an interesting point. TxDOT ran out of money to build those road grade crossings. Raymond, is that in the discussion right now? Because I know the flyovers at Artcraft and I-10 are funded, but are they working on building those road grade crossings again at Upper Valley and West Side Road?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I can look into it.
It was my understanding that they were going to do that. I guess I need to speak to Mr. Calvo at the MPO, but we are not anywhere near funding for ours at all.
Okay. We have one of our consulting engineers that I think wants to raise his
I think
hand
he
in the back.
knows some information about that.
Calvin Craker with HNTB, and just to share some public facts regarding the TxDOT-SH 178 Artcraft, that's a 3-mile project. It's improving from the state line all the way to I-10. It includes grade separations at West Side and Upper Valley where those two traffic signals are. Yes, so that's how the MPO's project description reads, and TxDOT is advancing that project. That's public fact.
Is it designed?
The design is underway. Schematic 60%. and PS&E 30%. It's
Any
progressing.
estimation on the cost?
Yes, the public number is in the range of 180 or 190 million.
All right,
Thank you.
you.
And that's infrastructure,
The road grade.
And Madam Chair, we're actually going backwards in New Mexico because I mentioned the Pete Domenici McNutt intersection. Just west of that intersection is a housing development, and we must have been asleep at the state level and probably at the private sector level. There's a road called Russell Boulevard that directly accesses Pete Domenici about a half-mile west. The NMDOT is putting a signal light there, and that's the last thing we want, because we want the Pete Domenici Artcraft Highway to be a thoroughfare where you don't stop. You can push traffic there. So unfortunately, we're going to have a stoplight just west of the stoplight at McNutt and Domenici. So the flyover there becomes even more imperative.
Okay, thank you. That always happens when you have residential, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, we want to thank you for spending the morning with us and giving us some really great information. I do think that there are some very good opportunities for us to assist, and we're going to do some detailed follow-up and coordinate, and any help you can give us in terms of getting us to the right people to get to meet, so we can see how we could maybe advance some of these initiatives quicker than otherwise.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. There is no other business, and so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. The time is 10:21. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Good work,
Thank you all.
everyone.